Good morning everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome back to yet another video. So we have the second Primal lot release on the global server, Crazed Shellbrute right here. So there were already a lot of cooking in the analytical Discord by a whole bunch of players with regards to this boss. So I think from the testing that are done by them, the best class or the best factional talent against this boss right now is actually the Mauler side. So I'll actually wait until my factional talent cooldown is fully resetted later to record it, because I want to respec my talents into the Mauler side to actually showcase the level 30 power of the team itself. So with regards to this video, we're going to talk about the best free-to-play team recommendations for you guys based on my free-to-play account on the test server itself. So before we start, I'm going to run through the boss's kit briefly and then talk about the different caveats or pointers that you need to take note of with regards to this boss in terms of your very own team planning. Okay, so first of all, running through the boss's kit, the boss has an AoE damage ultimate, Dazzling Flash. So this skill over here, I would say it's a decent amount of damage. Quite a bit if it's stacked together with the Shell Stampede. So this together with this deals quite a bit of damage, but if you don't actually get too close to the boss, you won't be affected by the Shell Stampede, or if you have a double healer in your team, you will be able to survive the AoE damage coming out from the boss from the ultimate as well as the Shell Stampede. Okay, so ultimate is an AoE skill that just does 300% damage to all enemies, and then Shell Stampede is the boss just working the giant tile in the 3 tile arc nearby in front of the boss itself. So these are the massive AoE damage part. Then the second skill is the Clam Glub. So this is a very important part of the boss's kit, which basically disables up to 2 of your units. So what will happen is the boss will actually just gobble up the unit, and then the unit will be just off the battlefield. And based on the boss's kit over here, right, if the unit is actually unaffected or in steadfast and it's beaten by the boss or glubbed by the boss, the unit will just be defeated instantaneously, right? So based on our earlier testing, the summons will not be gobbled up, and the illusions of barrel will also not be gobbled up. Okay, so it's basically just units, but there's one special case, which is Fresto with his illusion. So Fresto as well as the body is considered the heroes, right? So the illusion of Fresto will be gobbled up. So this makes Fresto super invaluable for this boss, either be it the damager as well as the tanker for the Clam Glub over here. So for this skill, right, this skill will require you to have I'll say like at least one Fresto to just tank the gobble up. So if you're playing the game for quite a bit, you can actually go with a very low tier Fresto. So Fresto for this boss is also the main carry based on the Mauler teams that were shared to me. And with regards to Fresto, if you have him at the lower tier, you can use him as the glub bait. If you have him at the higher tier, for example like Supreme Plus or even higher, then you can use him as the main carry for the team. So I'll showcase the free-to-play variant later on, and then stay tuned for the Z-Best Day 1 Primal Log guide slightly later, right? I'll record it later with regards to all my min-maxing and stuff. So the fourth skill, Grand Suction. So this skill allows the boss to actually draw all enemies close when there are no adjacent enemies on the boss's end. So I think if you have a Fresto plus 1 melee unit on the front line, the boss won't actually proc this Grand Suction. And one thing about this Grand Suction is it affects, I'll say, like the positioning of your units, which will also affect your Clam Glub targets. So this is where I think the Light Bearer combo, the Light Bearer team itself, I think it does quite a bit of damage, but then when you combine like the Light Bearer's RNG factor, like the units just move all over the place, as well as the repositioning ability of Grand Suction, as well as this Clam Glub, if your core units get glubbed up by the boss, you're going to lose a lot of damage, you're going to lose a lot of survivability, which is what you don't want. So Light Bearer, I think, is definitely possible against this boss, but there are a lot of RNG factor and also a lot of positioning factor to consider. So that's the different combos of this boss. So Clam Glub as well as the Grand Suction will be 2 things that you want to take note of when you plan your team, because you either run a whole lot of melee units to prevent this skill from happening, or you run like 3 units that can run on the front line. So later on, I have a team from the Wilders faction that can do that. So what will happen is you have 3 units on front line, so up to 2 units will be glubbed by the boss, but the third unit will still be standing on the front line, which will allow your rangers or your damage dealer to stay safely at the back to output damage. Okay, so that's the skills of the boss. And lastly, water barrier. So this is a skill which requires your units to have this base damage exceeding 300% of the caster's attack, right, to break the barrier, because this barrier over here reduces damage taken by the boss by 70%. So units like Kruger, right, units like Brian, units like Lily May, when she uses the ultimate, has this skill which is able to hit 300% and above. So this is what they mean by the 300 base damage. So basically any skill with the 300% value and above within the kit itself can be used as a shield breaker. So with regards to this boss, a few factors for you to consider if you are building your very own team. Number one, you need a shield breaker, very important. You need to have units which are able to cast a skill that is able to do at least 300% of the base damage for you to break this barrier to maximize your damage. Two, you need units to be gobbled up by the Clam Glub. Right, this will allow your other units to output damage under a safe environment. So this is I'll say like one boss where I think Fresto is super duper important. And even if you only have the really low tier Fresto, it is very usable. So I'll explain why later on. So this skill very crucial to sort of plan around. And then you also might want to plan around Grand Suction to prevent the repositioning of your units. So those are the few things you need to plan around with regards to tackling this boss. Okay, so now for the teams, like I mentioned earlier, I will be waiting for my cooldown for my factional talent to reset, so I don't use my ticket because I want to save my tickets to reset afterwards to try with other builds moving forward. So stay tuned for the Z-Bears Day 1 Dream Run Boss Guide with my main account later. Now for this video, we'll be using this account which is free to play, and for the teams that I'm running, we are running 2 different team archetypes. We have 2 recommendations for you guys, and I think most of these units are pretty accessible to most people. So first one will be the Wilder side. So we are fielding the 3 Wilders, Brian, Iron, as well as Lily May. Okay, so for Brian's case, Brian is both the shield breaker as well as the damage dealer for the team. But if you don't have Brian highly invested, 1 copy of Brian is also sufficient, because Brian has the ability to break the shield barrier immediately with the ultimate at the start of battle. And on top of that, Brian is able to break the shield pretty consistently with the ultimate, and he does pretty decent damage. On top of doing damage, Brian also offers the debuff with the hero bonus over here to increase the damage taken on the boss, which buffs up the damage of all your other units. And then Lily May is the strongest Wilders carry for this boss, also having the ability to do 400% damage to the boss with the ultimate, which will break the spell barrier for the boss over on the other side. So both Lily May as well as Brian has the shield breaking ability, and Lily May, being one of the best carry for this boss, is going to be the carry for this team over here. We also have Iron. So Iron is there for the factional talent as well as the debuff from the Ice Spike for the magical damage reduction, because both Brian as well as Lily May as well as Fresto, they're all magical damage dealer. And on top of that, I also serve another role, which is to be the frontline body to prevent the suction from happening. Okay, so I will talk more about it as we showcase this battle later on. And then we will be fielding a frontline Fresto. So I think Fresto is a very key target for this boss. In a sense, you don't actually need Fresto really invested. So like I mentioned earlier, right, Fresto at a higher tier can be the carry against this boss. But even if your Fresto is lowly invested, you only have 1 copy or 2 copy like myself over here, you can still use him for this boss, because Fresto is tanky enough to survive the damage coming out from boss, and Fresto will be your glub target against the boss. So you can either get Fresto from the guild store if you have sufficient guild coins, 1 copy is enough, or get it from the chest from the end of season rewards after you clear everything, or from your daily lock-in itself. 1 copy is sufficient just to be the body block, just to be the glubbing unit. So that's the purpose of Fresto. So don't ask me for replacement Fresto, because there isn't really any unit that can actually do what Fresto do specifically for this boss, which is to offer you the bodies to be glubbed by the boss. So that's why Fresto will be the key target for most teams. And the last unit is a sustain buffer, which is our dear Smokey, right, just to buff up the whole team as well as offer additional damage. So right here we're gonna do some level tuning for my units. We're gonna tune up Brian's level, I guess. Yeah, because the carrier of the prime carrier ability will have additional damage on the boss. And for this fight over here, we will be using the arcane spell. So because we are like, the whole team is a magical centric team, so this team does a whole bunch of magical damage, and we'll charge up this arcane spell really fast to offer you quite a bit of damage and debuff on the boss. On top of that, the defensive stat is also very juicy. So if you are understated or if you're not surviving very well, this is a very viable option for most of you guys. If not, I think the standard resonating spell to buff out Lily May is fine as well. So just throw an arrow with your own best artifact based on your own unit investment as well as account investment. So let's start with the battle so you guys can see what is going on in the battle over here. Okay, so at the start of battle, when Brian uses the ultimate, you can see the shield disappearing from the boss. So that is the magical barrier, and the boss just gobbled up one of the bodies of Fresto. Yeah, the illusion body. So this is the magical barrier that regenerates every 10 seconds. So you need units which can consistently pop the shield of the boss to actually prevent too much damage reduction throughout the battle. So for this case, Fresto's ultimate also does 300% damage. So Fresto is also really good shield breaker. Brian's a shield breaker, Lily May is a shield breaker, and you buff the two carries at the back with the Wildest Tau to give you additional damage. And because we have units standing on the front line, you can see that the boss is not using the Grand Suction ability. So this way, Lily May as well as Brian, even though they are unaffected from the Wildest talent, they are in no risk of being instantly defeated by the boss because they won't be gobbled up. They will just stay safely at the back to output damage. And in the front line, we have the 3 units just being gobbled up and also being the bait to prevent the suction from happening. So that's why you guys can see the boss is not using any form of sucking ability, right? If you're using any other teams out there, there is a possibility if you don't have units on the front line, what will happen is the boss will start sucking all the units towards him, and then this will change out the glupping target. So based on the previous few days of testing, the gobbling mechanic seems to just go on the closest unit that is in front of the boss. So center, left, I think it's left, center, right, yeah, something like this. So that's how the targeting mechanics work for the gobble. But in most cases, if you have at least one copy of Fresto, like just at a very base copy, you can just use him at the front line to just stand and take up the gobble from the boss. So this is how this team works. So I'm going to finish the battle. So you can see that throughout the whole battle, the boss pretty much gobbles 2 of your units. So that's why Fresto is super duper important, just to be a gobble meat or meat gobble for the boss. Okay, so this is the damage distribution. So if you take a look at this damage numbers over here, Fresto, which is at like this amount of copy, is already doing this amount of damage. So that's why the higher tier Fresto goes, the more damage Fresto can do. So that's why Fresto will be a carry in the Z-Best Day 1 Primal Lock guide later on, you guys will see. But this is me with my free-to-play account with a low tier Fresto with the Wildest team. Okay, so next, another team that you guys can use, I'll just use the same level distribution, I'm not going to adjust the levels too much, is the Wildest team. So for Wildest team, same thing, you still need Fresto. So Fresto on the front line to be the body, to be gobbled up. And then we will be running Odie as a carry. We also need Lily May as the carry because we might be missing some damage. So we can put, I think we can put, yeah, okay, we're going to put Smokey here, we're gonna put this, and then we're gonna also use Mikola. So this team over here runs on the 2 supports that buffs up your whole team, and by using the Mauler Tau, what will happen is Smokey will actually go in front, and Smokey will also be able to benefit from Mikola's buff. Let me just double confirm my positioning for a little bit. So I did quite a few testing, so I just got to double confirm this one. So this was one of the testing I did, one of the better results. Yeah, so something like this. So what will happen is the left Fresto walking up will be at the leftmost side. So this way, this boss will be gobbled up. We'll gobble up this Fresto first, and then followed by the frontmost Fresto, because Lily May will be slightly further back. And then for Smokey as well as Mikola, they will be able to safely channel their buffs and heals to keep your team healthy while buffing your team's damage. Okay, so this is the team setup. Let's run through another run. Okay, so let's shift up Fresto, put the thing here. We're gonna put Mikola behind the energy Fresto to get the ultimate up more consistently, and then we're gonna put Odie as well, the secondary carry. So Odie against this boss, I think it's fine. But in terms of the shield breaker role for this team, we do have our dear Lily May with the ultimate. We also have Resto, and we also have Smokey with quite a bit of damage. So we might not be breaking the shield as consistently because there isn't a super consistent source of 300% damage. We only have 2 units here. Actually 3 bodies, because Resto technically use ultimate 2 times, so it's also able to break pretty consistently. But we have the buffs from 2 of the most powerful Mauler buffers in the game to make up for the shield breaking difference. Okay, so let's level our unit here. Okay, so without further ado, let's showcase this team. Okay, so same thing, we use Arcane Spell for this one. So let's start this battle. So with the Mauler tower, what will happen is we'll be sending 2 of the units in, and based on our damage distribution earlier, you guys also saw that Smokey as a unit also does quite a bit of damage. To be expected of Smokey, one of the best bosser in the game. So you can see that this double aura or this double Mauler buff and damage dealing for the team is affecting both the carries to allow us to actually, I'll say, like, do more damage on the boss. So I think your shield on the boss will stay for a little bit longer, but the buffs coming out from the support as well as the additional damage from the Mauler talent tile will sort of make up for the damage difference. So pretty similar to the Wilders in terms of damage. So this is how the team looks like. So we're going to run at 2 times so you guys can see the end of battle results to compare the damage numbers. So right here, right, because you have Resto on a battlefield, the boss will gobble up 2 of the units pretty consistently, which is why the 3 units, even though they're standing on the front line, they're not gobbled up. Unfortunately for this build right here, Mikola will be gobbled up at the 3rd one. So I will probably try to figure out a better positioning, or I'll try to refer to the testing of other players from the analytical side to see whether or not I can find a better positioning for this build. But for this build over here, right, there will be this time where Mikola will be gobbled up, so you will be losing that courage spear buff, but you still have the arena buff right here. So overall still pretty consistent and good buff. And even if Mikola is gobbled up, the sustain from the team is more than sufficient to stay alive throughout the whole battle. So Smokey alone is more than enough to keep the team alive, so you don't need to worry that your team will die, at least with like this setup. So right here Mikola came out, so she's able to rebuff again. So just some final push in damage. So pretty close to the Wilder side as well. So this is the damage distribution. Okay, so we have more emphasis onto Smokey as well as a little bit of distribution into OD with regards to the bossing damage. So this is for the Wilders team, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the 2, I'll say, like, best free-to-play team recommendations. I think these units, they are generally pretty common amongst the different players. So with regards to the potential substitutes, I think if let's say you don't have Mikola, you want to use Coco, which is also okay. Although I think Mikola should also be pretty common. I think for this boss specifically, if you have sufficient sustain, even if your units are at a lower tier, they are definitely usable. So let's say if you only have like 1 or 2 copy of Mikola, you can still use her. If you only have 1 or 2 copy of Resto, you can also use Resto. But for Smokey as well as your carries case, you need them at the higher tier because you want their EX weapon as well as their damage output for the boss itself. So those are the things you want to take note of. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Just a simple showcase for the free-to-play teams that you can run with regards to this boss. So stay tuned for Zeeebo's Day 1 Primal Lock Guide later on, where I will actually try a few more testing with the more, I'll say, like premium teams, so that you guys can know what are the best teams available. And thank you very much for tuning in. Do remember to like and subscribe to see more. See you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.